Year 11. So in yesterday's lesson, we looked at the first section of the unseen poetry section. You had a go at answering that question for me. Now, you should remember from our first lesson on unseen poetry that there are two sections to the unseen poetry section. So can you tell me what the second section of the unseen poetry is, please? So what you should have told me in the do now task is that the second section of the unseen poetry is a comparison. So you will use the poem that you've already studied. You'll be asked to compare that to another poem that is written on a similar topic. So this is the question. Again, you're going to need to write it down in your books for me, and we're going to think about what the focus is. So in both One Day, which is what we looked at last lesson, and Wedding Ring, which is a new poem this lesson, the speaker explores their feelings about relationships breaking down. What are the similarities and or differences between the ways the poets present those feelings? And this is worth 8 marks. So this question is still about thinking about the breakdown of a relationship, yeah? But rather than you just looking at it in one poem, you're going to think about how these poems look at it in a similar or a different way, okay? And it doesn't matter whether you look at similarities or differences, as long as you're comparing the two poems, that's what the examiner is looking for, okay? So write that down in your book for me, make sure you highlight, obviously, the focus. Okay, then Year 11. So these are the two poems that we're looking at today. Now, obviously, in yesterday's lesson and the previous lesson to that, we did quite a lot of work on this poem One Day. So really, you shouldn't need to do much with that, because in the exam you would have already analysed it. But it's this second poem that obviously is going to feed into the comparison. So as you're reading it, you need to be thinking about whether it's similar or different to One Day. So this one's called Wedding Ring. So my wedding ring lies in a basket as if it is at the bottom of a well. Nothing will come to fish it back up and onto my finger again. It lies among keys to abandoned houses, nails waiting to be kneaded and hammered into some wall, telephone numbers with no names attached, idle paper clips. It can't be given away for fear of bringing ill luck. It can't be sold, for the marriage was good in its own time, though that time is gone. Could some artificer beat it into bright stones, transform it into a dazzling circlet that no one could take, for solemn betrothal, or to make present living will not give them to keep, changed into a simple gift I could give in friendship. Okay, so you need to think about now how either these poems are similar or how they're different. Now, personally, I'd say they're quite similar. They're both discussing a breakdown of relationship, aren't they? They're obviously thinking about newly divorced people. Okay, and we know that because of this first line here. So my wedding ring lies in a basket. Okay, they're both thinking about a life after being divorced, aren't they? So this one thinks about, obviously, that your heart will be mended, you'll be able to erase all of the things that's happened in the past, you'll have no fears of losing lovers, you won't have any reason to shed tears, and that's quite the same in here. So the idea that you'll almost forget about it. It lies in keys that are to abandoned houses. The idea that it can't be sold because at one point your marriage was good, but it's not any longer. Okay, that you'd like to just give it as a simple gift out of friendship now that maybe you're still friends with the person that you were once married to. So they're very similar because they're thinking about life after being divorced. Okay, however, they are different in the way that obviously this one is very much about the emotions that are attached to being divorced, whereas this one seems to focus quite heavily on the object. Okay, so they are both similar in talking about the breakdown of a relationship. These people have both obviously clearly become divorced. However, they're quite similar also in the way that they kind of present this idea of life after being divorced, but they're quite different in the fact that one seems to focus on the emotions of divorce, whereas the other one seems to focus on kind of the actual material object of the wedding ring. Okay, so what you need to do now is you need to create a response to this question. Okay, and as I said previously, it is only worth 8 marks, so they're not asking you to create a full essay. If you think about 8-mark questions that we answer in language, they're literally 2 to 3 paragraphs. Okay, so this is going to be a comparative PEE. So the first thing you're going to think about is how Patricia Deborah Wesley presents the breakdown of the relationship. So here is where you think about obviously how she focuses on life after being married and what that might look like. And then you can either talk about how it's similar to this one, where they talk about the breakdown of relationship and thinking about what's happening afterwards, or you could talk about the difference and obviously the way that the previous one focuses on the emotions of the situation, whereas the second one seems to focus on the material objects. And then it's really important just to include this little comparison sentence at the end of your PEEs, just to say that you either know that they are similar or that they're different. Okay, now you've got to make the choice as to how you answer this question. I've given you ideas on the previous slide about what you could say, but obviously only you can pick out what you'd like to say. So make sure that this is completed. Again, I'd like to see it at the end of this lesson if possible, and also you need to answer the Show My Homework quiz. Thank you.